Here we are continuing with dukkha. And today, the dukkha of not having. The dukkha of not having. What is perhaps the most sinister piece of fake news being peddled to the masses in what is still considered to be one of the wealthiest countries in the world is our inherent lack, our inherent sense of lack, that we don't have enough, that we aren't enough, that we need more. Whether real or imagined, this sense of lack is a real problem. Sadly, advertisers feed on this sense of lack in the hopes that we'll buy more. And we do. We have. To the point that hoarding has become a national problem in some developed countries, with storage facilities growing in number to house our things. We hoard out of fear, real or imagined, of not having enough. We hoard to the point that when a pandemic comes our way, at least here in the US, we hoard toilet paper and hand sanitizers and the basics for ourselves and our family without regard for our fellow man. The motto in this country, every man for himself. This is dangerous and short-sighted, and it's not true. We need each other, especially when the shit hits the fan. This hoarding is also dukkha, but perhaps harder to see. Greed is not pretty, but it's often a counter move to combat the fear of lack. And the messages of fear and lack get into our psyches. How could they not? But if they aren't seen, if they are just believed, they will cause trouble. And this is the invisible danger we face, believing that we aren't enough. By contrast, real lack is the lack of basic requirements, the requisites for being alive, a sustainable life, nutritional food, clean water, shelter, and clothing. We cannot survive without these. These are necessary requirements for human beings to live on planet Earth, especially as climate changes continue to surprise and traumatize. Real lack is real. People suffer. People lose housing to floods, fire, famine, pandemics, and violence. As our Earth heats up, real threats are more visible. We see other species going extinct because they lack basic requirements for life. Real lack for them has to do with human encroachment on their habitat, as we, once again, give preferential treatment to putting our needs first. Very short-sighted, very human-centric of us. As if we humans don't coexist in this natural world with each other and with all other living creatures. We're actually dependent upon this delicate balance of shared existence for our survival. But once again, advertisers of capitalistic societies would rather that we avoid and distract from those kinds of realities. In truth, hard as the truth may be, it's better to know, to be aware of the real threats to life. This is dukkha. And better to be aware of our knee-jerk reactions, which ironically often cause more dukkha for ourselves and others. It's also good to know our situation, our real situation, in relation to basic needs and to comforts, and to discern what is a real threat to our well-being and what is fabricated by us or by someone else. As a nurse and psychotherapist, putting our own position into perspective helps us in reducing dukkha. This helps us to distinguish real from imagined threat. This gives us a leg up when we're trying to figure out the best way to meet these ethical dilemmas with more wisdom and compassion. But perhaps the most sinister piece of fake news that is peddled to the masses, even in what is considered to be one of the wealthiest countries in the world, is our lack of self-worth. The messages are all around us. All advertising leads back to this fundamental mistruth that we are not enough just who we are. And sadly, we believe this, that without this or that, we're not worthy. Or because of this or that, we aren't worthy. We aren't thin enough, wealthy enough. We don't live in the right area, don't have the right clothes, aren't smart enough, creative enough, healthy enough. What's your flavor? Truthfully, I felt all of them at some point or another. As kids, all of us early on, we could suss out where we were in the pecking order. And often we weren't where we wanted to be. Lack of self-worth is an obstacle to happiness. How can we ever relax if we don't feel enough? And furthermore, by whose standards are we measuring ourselves against? Certainly not those of the practice, not according to the Buddhist teachings or the great spiritual traditions. Let's pause and consider that for a moment. According to the Buddhist teachings, being human, being born human is a boon. Yes, of course we're going to encounter pain, sickness, old age, death awaits all of us. The aching knees, the forgetful mind, the sadness about losing those we love, yes. But it is precisely because of these that there is a mix between joy and sorrow, a mix of pleasure and pain. And because we can reason, we have the perfect conditions for choosing how best to proceed, for deliberately choosing how to move in the direction of less harm and more ease of well-being. More options are available to us than those in the animal kingdom. The Buddha said, being born human, these messy conditions were the ideal conditions in which we can grow more wise and compassionate, because we can choose, because we have free will, because we have a measure of joy and sorrow, and that alone together, one highlights the other. In the Mahayana traditions of Zen and in the Tibetan Vajrayana traditions, this human life is seen as precious, inherently valuable, and that all human beings are born into fundamental goodness. Now that is a very different perspective than the one we are steeped in our modern world, isn't it? Fundamentally good, precious, and valuable. This is the starting point for practice. And what are all of these Buddhist practices doing? Well, they're uncovering and revealing perspectives through our own discovery. We are not asked to believe anything, but rather to practice in a particular way, in this case, a mindful way, in order to begin to see these truths for ourselves. Ehipassiko, come and see for yourself. There are lots of reasons I struggled with low self-esteem in my youth and well into my adulthood. But letting go of the narrative, seeing and feeling with greater clarity what was real and what was fabricated, the stories, seeing these stories that I tell myself and the ones that others tell me, be it my family, work, society, has given me freedom. I no longer just believe the thoughts in my head. In fact, the negative tape doesn't play as much. I no longer just believe somebody else's assessment of me. You know, I have learned to discern for myself thanks to the practice. And this is in fact the point of the practice, to start to see and feel and discern truth from fiction. But regardless, to hold the feelings that get activated. Real or imagined, lack is dukkha. The experience of lack is dukkha. How we relate to this dukkha, how we are able to relate to this dukkha, our ability to see it clearly, to feel it clearly, to discern its causes and conditions, informs how we respond. So let's not judge the feelings that arise. Let's not judge the judging or the feelings themselves. They simply are. Instead, let's strengthen the practice of noticing and naming the dukkha that is here. And with time, seeing the layers of judgment and reactivity that compound the stress that is already here. That's practicing seeing clearly. We're all in this together, you know. The fact that there is dukkha does not call our fundamental goodness into question. Let me repeat that. The fact that there is dukkha does not call our fundamental goodness into question. We don't need to get rid of our dukkha to be deemed good. Dukkha is simply a part of life. It's one of the three characteristics of existence. It's our collective starting point, as Buddha said. Nothing personal. We all encounter it. We're not alone. We're all in this together. All right. Enough for now. Thank you.